Will you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'll just say it.
Pledge allegiance
to the
flag
United States of America, and to the republic
For which it
stands one nation
under God,
God,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
Liberty and
Justice for all.
justice for all.
You sound great this morning. How about if we spend a few minutes and talk about of the things we think, say, or do? Is it the truth?
Is it the
Fair
truth?
to all concerned.
Fair to all concerned.
build good
Will build goodwill and better friendships.
Friendships.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And of course, will it be fun for all?
Will be fun.
Jay Eastman, Jay, would you please give us our invocation?
Well, Wayne, this is a little story. Winston Churchill visited the U.S. as a young man in 1895. For you millennials out there, Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II, and some credited by some as the reason we're not holding this meeting in German. In 1895, he wrote to his brother Jack about his impressions of the United States. This is a very great country, my dear Jack. Not pretty or romantic, but great and utilitarian. There seems to be no such thing as reverence or tradition. Everything is eminently practical and thus is judged from a matter of fact standpoint. Picture to yourself the American people as a great lusty youth who treads on all your sensibilities, perpetrates every possible horror of ill manners, whom neither age nor just tradition inspires with reverence, but who moves about his affairs with a good-hearted freshness, which may well be the envy of older nations of the earth. For the entire existence of our nation, we have been surprising the world repeatedly with our ability to pull together when faced with a common foe, despite the diversity of our national origins, races, creeds, religions, and personal political and philosophical beliefs. Churchill saw that, and 50 years later, when he was writing about the Second World War, he proclaimed that our entry into World War II assured victory for the Grand Alliance, referring to us as the Great Republic. We are faced with an evil today that threatens us medically and economically. Nothing but our best efforts together as Americans will help us to win this war. May the good Lord make it so. Amen.
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 Amen. Thank you, Jay. If anyone is a guest on the line, if you would go to the bottom of your screen in the middle, there's a chat button. If you would click on that, you can then type in your contact information, and one of our ambassadors will record that information and reach out to you and provide the information that you might be looking for to learn more about our club. Moving on, our 15th log on today was, believe it or not, it was Dick Spees.
All
Dick,
right.
I'm impressed that you're even on. Hi, Nino, I didn't see you there.
Oh,
So, Dick, you're exempt today. Now, if anybody has Happy Bucks, please go back to that chat button, click on it, and type in your Happy Bucks so that we can all see it. It'll be, everyone will be able to see the what you type there. Andrea mentioned that no one that feel, oh my goodness. Anybody else got Happy Bucks?
Oh, look at Marty.
I've got one that I'd like to offer up to everybody. Last week we sent out a quick email. Hap Walton had a biking accident and ended up breaking 3 ribs.
Oh, boy.
And also ended up taking a pretty cold bath for an extended time out here at our lake. He went to the emergency room by ambulance, and and then subsequently Ray Dorr called Glenn Garwood and asked Glenn to help. As you know, Glenn's been a Rotarian for some time and is the director there at the emergency room. You know, without going into personal details, Hap's treatment or his health is very complicated by the issues that he's dealing with on an ongoing basis, and the regimen of his medicine is very, very strict. I cannot tell you. I mean, Glenn was like an angel, reaching out, touching all the bases, reaching out to Hap's wife, Kathy, to keep her informed of what was going on, hooking her up with the nurse on his location there, who actually had been worked at one of the doctor's offices that Hap visits, so she knew all about his special conditions and his special needs. And I just can't tell you enough how happy I am. And Vince, if you would charge me, I'll put one in here for $10 for that. I am so happy. And thank you, Glenn. Anything else? It stopped snowing. All right, moving on to member birthdays.
How can I get rid of that?
We have a very new member, Amy Converse, who her birthday was yesterday. The mayor, Brian Barnett's birthday is tomorrow. And past president Rodney Holbert's birthday is tomorrow. So, John, will you open the mic so we can all sing happy birthday? Happy birthday
to you.
Happy
birthday
to you. Happy
birthday, dear
Rotarians.
Happy birthday
to
you.
$5,
please.
That's pretty pathetic.
Bad.
No comment. Club anniversaries. Dale Hetrick. Club anniversary will be on the 24th of April. Dale will have been with the club 2 years. And Rodney Holbert anniversary will be the 26th of April. And Rodney will have been with the club for 9 years. Moving on to announcements. Bill Evinger. Bill, you want to bring us up to speed on some of the exciting things going on at Rotary Park?
Oh yeah, I'd love to share that with everybody. So we were, as most of you know, we have a gazebo project going on at the park. Last year, I was approached by a person who wanted to do something. He lost his wife about 2 years ago and wanted to do something in the park, and we came up with the idea of the gazebo. And it took us about 6 to 8 months to pull everything together, but we decided to have the Amish build the gazebo, which they have. We did end up putting a foundation in for the gazebo on March the 17th. We got under the wire, and when we had poured that, I don't know if we have pictures of that or not. John, do you have pictures of the, I sent those. I don't know if you can show those at this point, but we managed to get the foundation poured, and then the gazebo was delivered early this month, and it sits shrink wrapped until we get Governor Whitmer to give us the okay to put it together. And we do have Scott Yurk, and his company is going to end up putting it together. So we're all set for that. We just have to be patient at this point, but it's going to be a wonderful addition to the park. And guess what? Last week I had somebody call, because we have signs up there. I had somebody call me and wanted to save next May for a wedding in the park. So we already have somebody that's going to use the gazebo. So very excited. We just have to be patient.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep.
Moving on, I think the last announcement that I'm aware of is our Masters Golf Raffle. I believe that Tim still has a few tickets left. I know that some more have sold. We are thinking to have the raffle on the 27th of October because the Masters has been rescheduled to the weekend of November 14th and 15th. But that October 27th date is an assumption on our part that we will be allowed to basically proceed with everybody in the same location. So if you can help us sell those remaining tickets, because the 20 to 30 that Tim has left, that represents $2,000-3,000 that goes right into our charity's pocketbook to help us help others through these difficult times. So anything you can do to help us out there, we would be greatly appreciative.
Wayne, it's not an announcement or a request, but I'm making face mask. I cannot find interfacing or elastic. So if anybody has 1/4 inch or thinner elastic and non-woven interfacing, I'd be glad to come and pick it up.
Okay. If you want to type up that request, I'll put it out to everybody. We've got close to 300 people on our email address for the club, including those that just receive our email but aren't members anymore. And I'll be happy to send that out to them, Christine. Okay. Moving on to our rejuvenated Rotarian of the Week award. We have a new member who has been so honored, and I see her bright shining face on our screen. So Julianne, if you could unmute, and the show is yours.
Thank you. I am so sorry that I missed last week. I think I've been pretty diligent about coming to most Rotary meetings, but I did miss last week. Thank you for having
if you miss, it's $10.
Sure. I did watch it on YouTube though. So kudos to everybody sort of pulling this together and making Zoom happen, and then also allowing people to watch it after the fact on YouTube. So I appreciate that tremendously. I want to say thank you to Ryan Deal for nominating me for Rotarian of the Week. That was very kind of you. He gave a very nice shout out for some of the electronic content. I'm happy he noticed. We have increased the number of ebooks, e-audio, music, online resources that you can engage with at the public library, just trying to keep you, some semblance of happy and reflection and building all that empathy and all that good stuff that's happening right now while we're staying home and staying safe. So thank you to Ryan for nominating me. I also want to give a special shout out to Mayor Brian Barnett. He also highlighted the library separate from the Rotarian of the Week last week, and he highlighted some of the work that we were doing with our 3D face shields and the fact that our makerspace was printing them with our 3D printer. So thank you to everybody who just highlighted the work of the library. We're getting creative. We're trying our best to kind of give back to the community in whatever way we can. So in terms of me passing this on, I don't physically have it. So imagine that I've got that beautiful bejeweled vessel that I could pass on to someone. I was reflecting on this, and I think most of you know I live in the downtown. And so to simulate sort of a daily commute, I actually take a walk down to the library almost every day and just check on the building. And as part of that, I actually pass by the Rotary Gateway Park.
Oh. So,
unbeknownst to me, and the fact that Bill was going to be doing an update, I am actually gifting him Rotarian of the Week because he was the first Rotary member that I met, separate from Christine, of course. She's the one who sort of brought me in, but I think he was truly my first member that I met. And I was so impressed with his high hopes for what he was going to do and shepherding this initiative to bring a gazebo to the park. I was so impressed. And it is a gorgeous pad of cement right now, and there is this palette of material that's just waiting to happen. But I encourage most of you to get out of your house if you can, take a walk, have a mask on, and just at least walk around that park. It's just starting to bloom with some of its beautiful perennial plants and whatnot. So I'm going to gift it to Bill.
I thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Congratulations, Bill.
Oh, great, thanks.
Just to build off of what Christine said, I want to thank John Somerville. I mean, John, without John's help, I don't know that we might have found the courage to try to put this together, but I do not think we could have gotten it together as well as we have. And by the way, just for a thumbs up, from the chats that I'm seeing on the Happy Bucks, I'm taking that everybody kind of likes that idea. That's a good way to do the Happy Bucks. Can I see thumbs up to tell me yes or no? Okay, looks like more thumbs up than thumbs down. Oh, I see a thumb sideways. Tim, when you're president in 2 years, you can change it, okay?
Just because.
Moving on. Before I introduce our sheriff for today, oh, Vince, I love the thumbs up. That's a great idea. He's clicked it off of the bottom of the Zoom. Before I turn it over to our sheriff, I want to remind you all again that at the bottom of your screen is the chat button. And in order to make it much more simple to collect the fines, you know, if you can still call our treasurer if you wish, but if you would just type in the chat, you know, basically, you know, charge me this for a fine. It'd be a lot simpler and a lot easier, you know, for our treasurer to collect the money. So with that, I want to introduce the real chief, the chief of Rochester, Chief Steve Shettenhelm.
All right,
Steve?
all right, folks. Well, welcome to the virtual sheriff. Can you hear me? That's what I need to know.
We can hear you.
No.
Okay, very good. I see a lot of head nodding. So when you're here, you make a lot of observations. If you're watching your screen at all, do have some concerns. Is it $5 or more if I call you out here? But Christine Haig, your picture appears that you're going through an earthquake right now. A lot of shaking back and forth. I'm just a little worried that we need to send somebody out and make sure that you're okay. Marty McClure, please, it's cold out, shut the window, okay? I mean, I could see the palm tree blowing in the breeze. We probably should be, you know, shutting that down.
I don't know how.
Well, do the best you can. If you help, I'll send the police out. We can shut your window. David Yeardley, I just trying to understand him. That guy has not blinked once since he's been on the screen, and I don't know how he does that. So we're going to have to check that out. Shirley Go Frank, I'm a little worried. You look like you lost your best friend. I mean, this is Rotary. We should all be having a good time. So, you know, try to put a smile on. David Blair, I'm a little worried about you. I noticed that you're eating kind of big bites when you're eating. Just worried about choking hazard. Just want to make sure that you're okay. So, you know, these are just things that I'm observing. I'm also trying to figure out how, if we're sitting at a Rotary meeting, we can all stay seated in our seats, but when we're on a Zoom meeting, you guys are all running around all over the place doing all kinds of other things. So just trying to figure out how that happened. You know, obviously it's great that everybody has figured this out. So if you happen to look down and you're in an all male or all female row or column, that's a $5 fine. When you're looking across squares. I do feel like I'm watching, if anybody remembers Hollywood Squares, I am worried, you know, thinking about that whenever I look at one of these meetings. And I would like everyone to kind of play along with me for a while. If you could extend your arms out, and then I want you to do is to close your eyes, and I want to touch your finger to your nose. Can everybody do that? All right, very good. So now what we've established is the number of people that are drinking while they're during their quarantine. And so we'll be having the police watch out for you guys if you illegally get on the road and do some unessential driving. Let's see what else. Oh, I also wanted to make everybody stand up, but I was a little afraid of that. Phil, sit down, please. Sit down. I didn't want to see that. And other news, I don't know if you saw this, but the president has said that he's going to shut down immigration. I don't know if you're aware of this, but rumor has it that Super Mayor Brian Barnett is fortifying his south border right now, and he's going to try to keep the Troy residents from crossing into Rochester Hills. So if you've already snuck out across the border and you've made it to Troy, Auburn Hills, or Rochester this week, that's already a $5 fine. Always try to, in the sheriff's report, hit some special holidays that are this month.
Number?
One is Holy Humor Month. So we're expecting a little bit more out of the online sermon this month from our Reverend Yeardley. It's also Irritable Bowel Syndrome Month. You probably didn't know that that was a month, but it is. So first of all, I'm sorry if that is something that you're celebrating. And second, if you are celebrating it, just kind of keep it to yourself. Lastly, tomorrow is Earth Day. So please make sure that you do something nice for the earth. And while we're at it, let's try to bring back some global warming if we can for a change. And it's $1 fine for every degree that we're below normal. The average low is 42 degrees this time of year, and we were at 26 this morning. So I'll let you accountants figure out how much we all owe for that. Also today in history, we know that Prince died today in 2016. So if you've ever seen Purple Rain, ever seen a dove cry, that's a $5 fine. And also, lastly, in history news, tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree was on the top of the charts today in 1973. So if you've ever found yourself humming that song, if you remember that, or if you remember Tony Orlando and Dawn who sang the song, or if you've ever washed your dishes in Dawn soap, that's all $5 fine. And also, while we're talking about ribbons, remember that if you wanted to support our healthcare workers, tie a white ribbon around the old oak tree and remember them out on the front lines of the COVID crisis. So thank you very much. Remember to pay those fines. And who knows who will be sitting in this seat next week, but we'll be back at you next time. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you for all those who've used chat to pay your fines. I think it'll make everything a lot easier for everybody involved. Moving on, some time ago when we met face to face, we had a live panel of some of our Rotarians that came in and talked to us about the intricacies and what was new with respect to the tax law changes last year. And that meeting was particularly well received. And so as David Eardley and I were talking about what to do to start up our club, the suggestion was, well, let's focus on all these activities now that are out there to, because of COVID-19, to try and provide government assistance to businesses as well as individuals, and in particular, the payroll tax credit. And within our club, we have a very active member, an officer, Vince Mattina, who has stepped forward to offer to assist with that. And he's brought along one of his partners, Jennifer Lundy, who I understand has particular expertise in the payroll tax credits. And my only comment is, we need to figure out how to get Jennifer an application to join the club before she leaves the meeting. But with that, let me pass it on to Vince and Jennifer.
Thanks, Wayne, for the opportunity to speak to the members today. We have spent a tremendous amount of time over the last month just trying to get our arms around this project with the CARES Act, the opportunities that are out there, a tremendous amount of time in webinars. And when the law was passed, you're talking about a $2.3 trillion deal on trying to stabilize the economy, the small business that's out there. A lot of confusion on what are the opportunities that are out there? How do you calculate the availability to credit? Where do you go for it? That what Jennifer and really the whole firm has done is compiled a lot of that information together If you have any questions on it, I put our emails in the chat room. So feel free to reach out to us. I was on a couple of Zoom meetings today with the weather, the wind being in there. There's been some audio issues with some of the Zoom meetings that I was at today. If there's any problem with that, please let us know as we go through the presentation. And then if there's any questions that you have that you'd like to reach out to us privately, rather than putting it into the chat room, feel free to use either one of our email addresses in the chat room to ask those questions of us privately if you so inclined want information that we're not getting to you right now. So, one of the first things that came out through the SBA, and most of the lending is going really through the SBA and through the Treasury, was the emergency injury disaster loans, the IDEA loans that first came out. And there was a lot of meat to those loans initially because they were a quick $5,000 or $10,000 grant that was available with loans that would go up to $250,000, up to $2 million with the loan program that was in there. That was one of the first pieces of legislation that came out. And then as that was being developed and as that was starting to move along, and there were some requirements to that where you had to have a 50% reduction in revenue from the same time the prior year. So looking at, if you look at restaurants or if you think of service businesses that rely really on some public in and out, those were the industries that were first going to be affected by this shutdown. And as that loan was starting to at least get a little bit of traction, the PPP loan, which is the Payroll Protection Program loan, was then being introduced. And there was a lot of negotiations through the Congress and Senate as to what that program was going to be like and what is really the makeup of who would qualify for that, which is really for small businesses that have 500 or less employees. And it was a factor with most of these loans that are really revolving around payroll. And how can we keep employees on payroll, so as not to really flood so much of the unemployment system that's out there. So the way that the program, the PPP loan program was set up is that you look at payroll costs for 2019. So payroll costs were defined as gross wages, and there was a lot of confusion on the way that the definition of gross wages were, because initially there was some conversation about federal withholding, state withholding, FICA, Medicare withholding, which after a few days, the SBA came out with some frequently asked questions, which then clarified at least what gross wages were. That also includes employer matching of 401k plans, matching of simple plans in the retirement portion, as well as some health insurance plans that are out there. We're all part of the payroll calculation. Payroll companies, some of the large payroll companies were preparing schedules to tie into those numbers, and their schedules were wrong. They had picked up employer matching of FICA taxes, which was not part of the program at all. So after a few more days, they went ahead and started correcting their reports. So there were a lot of this confusion and loan applications that were going in that were inaccurate in the way of the calculation of what was available for loans. We developed an Excel spreadsheet and really monitored that spreadsheet so in order to help our client calculate what was the amount of loan that they can go through, as well as putting together, each bank had a different requirement of what they were looking for to support the loan numbers. So we created some PDF files on 941 payroll tax forms, Michigan unemployment tax forms, which was also part of the calculation, healthcare forms, in order to put that into a PDF file And as the banks were starting to roll out their websites, it was easier for our clients to take our spreadsheet, attach all of their PDF files, and then upload those into the file for the bank. And there were some banks, the larger banks that were out there, really did a fairly poor job when it came to pulling together those websites. There was one bank in particular that didn't really get their website up and running until Tuesday of last week, and the money was run out by Wednesday. So a disservice to a lot of the customers that were with that particular bank, because they never really had an opportunity because of the way that the bank set up their programs to do that. The PPP funding is, we're seeing clients that were funded from last week with some of the last funding coming through. And the statistics are staggering when you look at millions of applications that were put in through the SBA, and it all had to run through the SBA. Just having them go through the bank process and then going into the SBA and having all those approved, with the Treasury then supporting the SBA to get that money back out again. Once the money is received, then we're going through more confusion on, there's a loan forgiveness part of that. As long as 75% of the loan proceeds were paid for payroll costs and 25% can be used for utilities, rent. What is the definition of utilities? It seems like it's a simple process and what you would think utilities are. But again, there's a lot of clarity that we're still trying to get our arms around. What does that mean? Our position was process the application, get the money. We'll worry about the forgiveness part after. Just get your application in. You've got 2 years. If part of the loan is not forgiven, the loan turns into a grant. The grant is forgiven. The loan stays on at 1% interest over the next 2 years. That's not a bad problem to have, but let's get our money first, and then we'll start working on it. And what it's created is really, it's brought patients to a much higher level than what we've ever had before, because no one has a crystal ball in what does this really mean. We're all still trying to learn this together. We're in several chat rooms with CPA firms across the country, and we're not alone here in Michigan with the ongoing problems that we have with processing some of these loans that are out there. And as I said, with a lot of this, it revolves really around payroll. If you didn't qualify for the PPP loan, or you weren't available to go in, again, who knows what's going to happen with this next round. There's still a lot of fighting within the Senate and Congress as to how are they going to allocate the next $250 billion, and is that the right number? How do we bring this to local government, state government, the healthcare system? Are they going to be carved out a greater portion of this next $250 billion, or are we going to really have small business of some availability to small business again? So that is where now we're watching the pulse. Banks and clients that have not had the opportunity to get into that program, their banks are still holding on to those applications with the opportunity that once that is released and there is potentially the opportunity for them to get involved, they can maybe process those applications a little bit quicker. So if you didn't qualify for the PPP, or you don't have the availability to do that, there's other opportunities that are out there. One of them is really the payroll tax credit piece. And what I'd like to do is turn it over to my partner, Jennifer, who will then talk about really that opportunity that you might have as an employer that has retained employees. So Jennifer?
Can everybody hear me? Vince, can you hear me? Okay, good. I have a little bit of technical difficulties, and I can't read the chats either. So Vince, if you see some questions, let me know if anyone has some questions that they might have. I actually was going to start off talking about unemployment. I'll just talk really briefly about it. As if anybody doesn't already know, both regular employees and self-employed individuals are now eligible for unemployment. That's something that hasn't been like that in the past. To apply for unemployment, they want to go to www.michigan.gov/UIA in order to file and make their claims for both types of individuals. One thing that I found with clients that we've been talking to, their employees have had some frustration with getting into the unemployment system and understanding how it works. They have some great videos online. You do have to certify weekly to, you still have to do that portion of it in order for you to attain your money. The benefits have been expanded to 39 weeks. And then the other popular item that you may have already heard about is that the state of Michigan, through the UIA, has started to also fund the additional $600 per person per week that's coming from the federal unemployment benefit. And people have started to receive that. That additional $600 only goes through July 31st. So after that, there's no more $600. Hopefully we'll have people back on payroll and working again by then anyway. And the other thing that's been a common question is those benefits are taxed. So those are going to be included in income when you do your tax return for 2020. And that's, you know, I'm sure there's a million more things I can say about unemployment and all of this stuff, but like Vince said, every day something changes, something's new, we're learning things every single day. We just get 100 emails from all the different organizations that we're associated with. And so it just seems like we get more clarification every day, maybe some changes. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was the two different types of employment tax benefits for employers. There's two sections under the CARES Act. Section 2301 is your employer retention credit. And then section 2302 is your employer payroll tax deferral. And so I just wanted to give you a brief 101. I can get pretty deep into all of these subjects. Feel free to email me if you have any questions on them. But I was just going to give you a really high overview of what those two opportunities are. The 2301 employer retention credit is a credit that you will get. It's a maximum of $5,000 per employee or 50% of wages up to $10,000. To be eligible, you have to be a trade or business during 2020. And during the calendar year, your operations were fully or partially suspended as a result from the government limiting commerce, travel, or meetings. So you have to be affected by this COVID crisis in order to get this credit. The qualifying wages depends on how many employees you have. So there's a different calculation if you have more than 100 employees. If you have less than 100 employees, it's all of your wages would be considered for this particular credit. The employee retention credit wages that you use to calculate those wages cannot be taken with other credits. So we can't double dip the wages that we're utilizing for those credits. But in a very confusing turn of events, you can use both the employer payroll tax deferral and the retention credit. Again, there's still a lot of confusion out there, and we're still looking for additional guidance on using these two things together that I'm talking about today. In order to claim the credit, you are going to reduce your federal tax deposit amounts when you file your 941 tax return. There is an opportunity to get a rapid refund for this retention credit. It is done on a new form. The IRS created Form 7200, Advanced Payment of Employer Credit due to COVID-19. So if you are wanting to take these credits now, you would fill out that 7200 form instead of waiting until the end of the second quarter to file your 941 for payroll taxes. And supposedly we're supposed to be able to get that money from those credits within a couple weeks, but there has been no guidance on exactly how long it's going to take them to process that form. The other important thing to know about this employer retention credit is that you cannot do this employer retention credit and the PPP loan. So if you're getting the PPP loan, the one that Vince talked about today, the Paycheck Protection Program, you cannot also take this employer retention credit. The other opportunity for employee taxes that's a benefit for us is the Code Section 2302, Employer Payroll Tax Deferral. The deferral is the employer side of the Social Security tax that you pay for payroll. So that's 6.2% of your wages. It will be, and there's also certain railroad retirement taxes that would also fall under this portion of payroll tax deferral. And it's for any taxes for payroll that was paid between March 27th and December 31st of 2020. Some other things is the deferral amount, the deferred amount can be deferred through 2022, but 50% of that deferred amount has to be paid by December 31st, 2021. And then the balance of that is going to be due December 31st, 2022. Self-employment individuals can also take advantage of the payroll tax deferral. They are able to defer the 50% of the Social Security tax that's imposed on them for their self-employment income. And this they may do by reducing their estimate payments. So if whatever they reduce their estimate payments by to cover this deferral will not be penalized or have any interest on them. It's all so easy. Reporting this deferral will happen on your second quarter 941. So that return and going forward, they're going to revamp that 941 form, and there will be some opportunity on that form to record how much you've deferred. So you'll take the deferral now once you've calculated it, which to me is not an easy calculation for somebody who may be doing their own payroll. You have to make sure you pull out that one piece of, several parts of your payroll that you can defer. That's my own editorial on that. But we're still also waiting for the draft copy of that second quarter 941, and we are still waiting for additional guidance on both of these opportunities to defer some payroll tax. The other thing about the payroll tax deferral is you can have applied for the Paycheck Protection Program and utilize this tax deferral program. If you've applied for and received your loan, you can continue to defer your payments through the date that the lender issues you the forgiveness of debt portion. So once you get forgiveness granted to you from your lender, you have to stop your deferrals. You can no longer defer this payroll tax. However, anything that you've deferred prior to that date is a deferred amount, and you would have to pay it based on those due dates that I mentioned, the 50% before December 31st, 2021, and the balance by 2022. So it's not like once you get your forgiveness, you have to turn around and pay all that deferral right away. That's not the case. You just can't defer any further going forward once you get the forgiveness, which should happen after 8 weeks once you receive your loan. I did check with some of the bigger payroll companies to see how they're handling it. I double checked with my representatives at ADP and Paychex. ADP has a phone number that that the customers or the clients need to call and request that the deferral happen through that payroll service. So I'm imagining some of the other payroll services out there might have the same opportunity. So if you're using a payroll service for your business, I would get in contact with them and ask them how they're handling these opportunities. Paychex, they also had a similar thing where you had to reach out to them and let them know, what needed to be done. Again, that's a very high level 101 of that, those payroll opportunities that are out there. Please feel free to email me. We will get you questions. There's still a ton of questions out there. Every day, someone comes up with a new question on all of this stuff that we're looking at. So thank you for letting me talk to you today. And that's all I have.
So then the next piece if you've got an employee who has, through the expansion of the Family Medical Leave Act, there's the Family First COVID Act that came through. And what happens is there's 6 criteria that would qualify an employee for this expansion. It has to be for employers with less than 500 people. The first 3, are relative to, were you advised by your medical professional to quarantine yourself? Are you caring for somebody that's in, it really revolves around you as an individual that is affected by the COVID-19. The next 3 really have to do with who are you caring for? It's not you, but it's for someone that you are caring for. With one of the critical pieces, it's the 5th reason that's down, is if you're caring for a child who, because the daycare provider is closed or the school is closed, that you are eligible for this expansion of the Family Leave Act. And what your employer is required to do is keep you on payroll, that you're entitled to 2/3 of your regular pay, capped out at $200 a day over a 12-week period. So that allows you to stay on payroll, get some benefits from your employer as you go through. But it's a very specific requirement that you have to meet in order to get involved in those provisions that are out. There's other opportunities that have come in. The U.S. Chamber has a small business fund. They're accepting applications effective yesterday on the 21st. That is if you employ anyone from 3 to 20 people, you're economically vulnerable in the community and that you've been harmed financially by COVID-19. So there's another grant that has just been released. Michigan has come in with the Michigan Tech Startup Stabilization Fund, which is now accepting applications. That's for any tech company that's headquartered in Michigan, early stages of innovation, less than 50 employees. And it really revolves around how we can improve the tech industry here in Michigan. So those are a couple of things that came in. One of the other questions that we continue to get emails on is really the stimulus package from an individual and an income tax side. The IRS's website is extremely challenged when it comes to looking at, did I qualify? Do I qualify? Where's my return? We've had deceased clients that have gotten their stimulus check. Well, they're not entitled to that. We have clients that married in 2019 that have gotten 3 checks, one from their spouse from the 18 return, 2 from the married filing joint return, and 19. We have clients that no one can find out where the return is or whether they're going to qualify or how much are they getting. And there is no phone service. In the past, we always have the practitioner hotline that we could call somebody. It's a direct line to a higher level of IRS agent that we can get some answers to. We have really no support. The only thing that we can do is just patiently tell them to go back and, like the unemployment website, is go back and look and keep trying. There's a spot for a non-filer. There's a spot on the irs.gov site that is for filers that didn't have direct deposit. One of the challenges that we're finding is that if we have a client that has an overpayment that was applied to their first quarter estimate, which now first quarter, second quarter, and tax returns are all due July 15th. If they had their overpayment applied to the first quarter, the IRS site has no provision for that. It's either refund, balance due, and they don't understand that applied to the first quarter estimate is really a refund. It's a choice of what you did with that refund. That those are the clients that are running into a challenge on the IRS website. So I wish, it's put us in a difficult position because some of these answers we don't know. Some of these challenges, we don't know how to help the client because we have no support ourselves. So it's getting, more from our peers, finding more information from the blogs that we're in, the seminars that we're in, to try to get them through. But as I said in the beginning, patience is totally a virtue at this point. You just really have to take a deep breath, understand the magnitude, how this has affected really not only Michigan, but really across the country. And that we'll get out of this. We'll start to see more and more cooperation with these websites. But at this point, our hands are kind of tied. And we can only be there just to say, I understand your problem. I wish I could help. We're doing our best, but there's some things that we just can't do anything about. So, Jenny, a couple of questions that came in on the unemployment piece side of it. If the employee is afraid to come back to work, are you aware of any allowing that to be part of the provision for the unemployment benefit?
I don't know. That's a really popular question. What if, they don't want to come back? Not really sure how that's going to be handled. The $600 additional that people are getting as well might be offering them a better weekly paycheck than they might have been receiving before. So that's another question that goes along with the paycheck protection loan, trying to get people off of unemployment and back onto the payroll.
Yeah. Okay, I'm looking through the chat room. I don't see any other questions. As I said, if there are any questions that anybody has and you want to email us directly, then we will go ahead and reply back to that.
Vince and Jennifer, thank you very much on behalf. We had, by my count, 42 people logged in today to this call. So again, I think that's a great response. I noticed some from out of town who wouldn't have been able to join us if we'd have met face to face. Chief Shettenhelm, thanks again for being our sheriff. Bill, please continue on with your good works over there at the Rotary Park. If we do have more questions, there are more angles to this whole topic, as Jennifer and Vince mentioned. If our members want to, we can try and find more experts in different parts of this than what Vince and Jennifer talked about. If you wish, let us know, and David Erdley and I will do everything we can to try and identify members within the club that have the expertise. I mean, I know we've got a couple of bankers. So if you've got questions like that, please let us know as soon as you can, and we'll do everything we can to schedule people to get you the most help possible, because we're all in the same boat together here. That's one of the big lessons that I've learned out of this whole COVID-19, is how dependent we really are upon each other. So with that, John Somerville, thanks again for all of your help, John. I appreciate that you've recorded this meeting so that people can watch it on our website if they weren't able to attend the meeting. And with that, meeting adjourned.